Great to have you listening in today. As with previous seasons, it is my hope that the guests and their stories that I get to share with you this season can provide you with the tools and or insights that you need to know that you can make it through whatever is happening for you now. And not only that, that you can have the life you want in whatever way you want that to look like. So let's get to it. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and this is the beautiful side of grief. Have you ever considered doing something epic? I mean, really epic, that completely takes you out of your comfort zone? Well, my guest today has not only done that, but she has done it in her later years of life. Kathleen Donnelly Israel found a new future to dream about when the retirement dreams she and her husband shared were dashed by his illness, and she ended up being his carer for 17 years. This plucky lady, who graduated with a bachelor's degree in art from San Diego State University and studied Expressive Arts Therapy at the European Graduate School in Switzerland, and that is quite a mouthful, started married life with a twist by being part of the worldwide marriage encounter with her husband, Ron. They went on to raise 5 children together, and during Ron's journey with Parkinson's, Kathleen studied spiritual healing from many enlightened thought leaders and teachers, and today she is currently a transformational breathing facilitator. What we're exploring today, however, is her incredible and inspiring 500-mile, or that's approximately 800 Ks if you're listening from New Zealand or this side of the world, walk from France to Spain in what is known as the Way of St. James or the Pilgrimage of Compostela, otherwise also known as the Camino de Santiago. The insights from which she has shared in her book, Wisdom on the Camino, a spiritual journey sharing forgiveness and possibilities to inspire the rest of your life. The intention I'm setting for this episode is that from Kathleen's story, you can know that you can still dream big no matter what life throws at you, and to have the courage to step outside of your comfort zone, to find the answers you need, and that wisdom can be found in the most unexpected encounters. I'm also sending you loads of love wherever you are listening from, that you find your way to peace and happiness. And I'm grateful that you are listening in to what I hope is going to be a truly inspiring hour ahead. So a very warm welcome to you, Kathleen. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Helen. I'm so happy to be here.
First up, I just want to explore a little bit. How on earth did you and Ron get to be part of that worldwide marriage encounter?
Oh, yes. Well, we were married for 7 years when we made our first marriage encounter. And it was, when you get married and you've got the honeymoon and you're all in love and everything, and then life happens and all of a sudden you don't feel loving anymore. And that's where I was when we went on our marriage encounter. I was just really sad. And I just thought, wow, I married Ron. Maybe he should have married somebody else that would love him, because I did not feel like I loved him, because it was really hard. We had 3 children by then, and life was hard for me. And Ron wasn't, I didn't feel really loved by him at that time either. And so when we went on the marriage encounter, they told us that love is a decision. And I thought, oh, okay, I can do that. I can decide to love Ron. I thought I had to feel loving to love Ron. And that's not the truth, that you can decide to love someone. And really that's where the tire hits the road when you're married, is when you decide to love them, when you don't feel like it. So then it just gave my whole life meaning after that, because I felt like a fake, before that, because I felt like I didn't love Ron. And then after that, I was like, oh, love is a decision. I can do this.
Yeah, it's all about perspective, isn't it? And for those who don't know what a worldwide marriage encounter is, how would you describe that?
Well, couples go away on a weekend to this marriage encounter weekend and takes care of your children, and somebody prays for you all weekend. We didn't know that in the beginning, but at the end, the people who has been praying for you all week, bring a candle and stuff and greet you off your weekend. So that was really special. There's talks the whole time. And really the reason why Ron and I were selected to be a team couple is because of the sheer delight on my face and Ron's face when we found out that love is a decision. And we were just like flying. We were, we were giddy, and they thought, okay, this is a good couple to give the talks on the weekend. So, but yeah, one of the things that you also learn is that just through talks all weekend long, and there's 3 couples and a priest that give the talks and during the weekend, and they read them too. Like they write them and read them. They don't, come off the page. And so one of the things that really also struck me is the stages of love. First you have romance, then you have disillusionment, and then you have joy. So when you're in the disillusionment, you got to wait for the joy because it's going to come, and then you can have your romance again. It's a cycle. It's a cycle.
That sounds so beautiful. What an amazing thing to go through. And did it stay with you for the rest of your life together? That, knowing that it was a choice to love and
yes, definitely. That was so important to me in my life when things just didn't go my way. And then I had to make the decision to love. Yeah.
Gosh. So you and Ron were together for 48 years, raising 5 children. So you obviously have been talking about those retirement years together and what you'd get up to and the time you'd spend together. And then that was all dashed. So let's take a look at that now. How did that come about for you?
Well, I thought we would be riding our bicycles across France. Ron never wanted to do anything I wanted to do. And so I had to after a while, I was like, well, let's find out what Ron wants to do. Maybe it'll be fun, And so Ron was an athlete. He was a triathlete, actually. And so that was really sad when he got Parkinson's disease. But I thought that we would be doing something like riding our bicycles, and he loved the Peloton, and I'm like, wow, we could go to France. I mean, not during the Peloton, but we could go there and ride our bicycles. And there's, tour groups that they have a van. If you get tired, you can get in the van, stuff like that. So I was like, even though I am not an athlete, I don't consider myself an athlete. I was married to an athlete. And so yeah, I really did not discuss it with him. I was just trying to think of something he'd like to do so I could have something to look forward to.
So was it a gradual acceptance, when he got Parkinson's, that your dreams weren't going to be as you imagined, that you had to find a different reality? Or did you struggle with it? How did you cope with that?
Yeah, when Ron was diagnosed, he was 51 years old. And our son was a senior in high school. He was going off to college the next year. And he had to quit his job because he couldn't write anymore. And he had to document things on his job in writing. So he wanted to just do the medical model for his disease. And I wanted to find a cure. And so I sent off, I actually sent $50 to some guy in Australia that said he had a cure for Parkinson's disease, but Ron wouldn't have it. He didn't want to do that. And I bought negative ion clothes. They said they would help him. He didn't want to do that. And so I had to just, put up and shut up and just let him do the medical model of Parkinson's disease. And that really angered me because I'm not a person that takes medications. So he was taking medication, carbidopa, levodopa, and then he was taking medication for the side effects for that, and then he was taking medicine for the side effects for that, and he was taking like 8 pills, several times a day. And I was just like, oh man, I was very unhappy. And one day he decided to please me by not taking his medication. And he was sitting on the couch. He could not move. And that made me really mad because he could move before he started taking those meds. And then after he started taking the meds, he couldn't move unless he took the meds. And that really angered me. And so I was just like, oh, but he was quite well for quite a few years until 2010. He was in so much pain. And I told him, why you're in pain? It's because you're med soup. Like you have so much meds in you. And so, we took him to the doctor for that. And they said he had stenosis of the spine. And I was just like, and then they wanted to give him gabapentin for that. And I'm like, no more meds. No, And so we met this doctor. He was a retired doctor. And he told me he could cure Ron. And I said, you go talk to Ron about it. Because if I talk to Ron about it, he's not going to want to do it. So the guy talked him into it. And he took all of Ron's meds away from him. And the next morning, Ron was in so much pain that he was like crying. And he was saying, you don't understand. I need the medications. So I called the doctor, and he was walking up the street to my house. He came every day. He wanted to cure Ron. And he came in, gave Ron a coffee enema, and Ron never had any pain anymore after that. And although he was paralyzed because he wasn't taking the medication. And so the doctor came every day. He did the first coffee enema, and he had me do 2 more during the day. And he had me juicing carrots and green apples and celery and feeding that to him. And he was just trying to get the meds out of him. And so after 6 months, the doctor gave up. And the doctor told me he was going on vacation. And then we never saw him again. And,
oh my gosh.
I just figured he gave up. And there I had Ron paralyzed. And Ron didn't want to take the meds anymore because Ron was so happy that he wasn't in pain. He was like, oh man, I'm so happy. And he just, he didn't mind sitting there watching cowboy movies and NCIS all day long and being waited on hand and foot by me. He was happy. And so, that was going to be the rest of his life there. But our children were like, you can't just leave him paralyzed. And so we got him a deep brain stimulator, and the one side worked, but when they did the other side, he was paralyzed after that. And also he couldn't talk. So it was a failed deep brain stimulator.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that was the rest of his life, and that was in 2011, and he lived to 2018, but he was a happy man. He wasn't in pain. And, he had one of those lift chairs that could lift you up, and it was right next to his bed with the TV straight ahead, and so I could just, in the evening, I would just wrap my arms around him and pull him up and just do a pirouette and throw him in his bed. And, he could sleep, that was it, and so, I had to change his diapers. He didn't want to do the catheter thing, but he didn't mind diapers. So, I got puddle pads and, just protecting the furniture and stuff. So that was it. And then in the end, he couldn't swallow anymore, and that's what did him in.
Yeah.
And they offered him a, what do you call it, a feeding tube.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, how's that going to work? If you have a feeding tube sticking out your side, how am I going to grab you around the waist and and throw you in your bed? I mean, I didn't know what we would do. And so he had a choice if he was going to go to hospice or if he was going to get a feeding tube. And he decided to do hospice. And he was really, I don't know, he looked like death warmed over anyway, even though he was a happy man, he was death warmed over with a smile on his face. And so it took him 1 week to die after we got hospice. We got it on Sunday. He was gone on Sunday. So he was ready to go. And it was so great. It was so kind of funny. He used to write with his finger on my hand. If he wanted something, he would write the letters on my hand with his finger. And so he wrote menudo, because he loved menudo. It's a tripe soup, kind of a Mexican tripe soup. He wanted a menudo and a Corona, which is a Mexican beer.
Yeah.
And so I got some of those they have little tiny Coronas that are very small. So I got some of those, and then I got a can of Juanito's Menudo and cooked it up and put it in the blender, and I just sort of took a spoon and poured it in his mouth, even though he couldn't swallow. Somehow he got it down. That was like the first day he was on hospice. And then the next day he wrote menudo on my hand again. So I did that again, but he couldn't swallow. He choked on it. And then the next day he was like in his chair and he was pointing out into the room with this giant smile on his face. And he wanted me to see something that he saw that I couldn't see. And I was thinking that maybe it was angels, or maybe his dad or his mom, came to get him or something. I don't know. But he was very excited and I couldn't see him.
Yeah.
And then the next day, he sort of was inside of himself and he did not respond, although he was still breathing. And then he was that way for several days. And my son was living in Northern California, came down, and my daughter lives here in San Diego. So she came over and they were just, just caring for him. Yeah. And the hospice people gave us a little book about how you can tell if the end is near and stuff. Mm-hmm. And really these nurses used to come too. And my daughter asked one of the nurses, how long do you think he has? And she said, he won't be here past this weekend. And she was right. Yeah. But anyway, they had this list of things to watch for. But I read the list and I thought, well, I've been seeing this for years. I didn't, it didn't. Yeah, I didn't correlate what was going on with what was on the list because I'd seen it for years. But my kids could tell. And so on Sunday, my son came to get me. I was in the kitchen and he said, come on, Mom, I think this is it, And so Ron was in his bed and he had this little pillow under the back of his neck, one of those little bone-shaped pillows. And Ron was on one side holding his hand and Lisa was on the other side and she had her hand on his heart. And I thought, wow, she did that so she could tell when his heart stopped. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that, Yeah. And they had one of his favorite songs playing, and I'm going to tear up here.
Oh, you go ahead. Go right ahead. What you were sharing is just incredible. And there's somebody out there listening who's really going to value what you've shared. So take all the time you need and be exactly as you need to be. You're in a safe space.
And I had him kind of dressed in one of my favorite shirts on him, the hospice nurse told me to put something that I didn't care about on him. And I thought, are you kidding me? I'm going to put my favorite shirt on him.
Yeah.
And so it was a t-shirt with kind of like palm trees and the beach painting on it. Because she had to cut up the back of his shirt. I guess that's why she wanted me to get a crummy shirt. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he, a couple of times he just sort of almost stopped breathing. He stopped breathing, and then we looked at the clock, and then he would start breathing again, and we kind of went that way for a while. And then finally he was done, and I was sitting at the end of the bed, and John and Lisa were close to him, and I just felt him hug me as he left. I could feel the visceral hugging of me when he left. And that was really lovely.
Oh,
so
that is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, what an experience. And thank you so much for sharing that. I know it tears you up, and I know it's still very close to your heart and when you remember things like this, but I'm a great believer that the conversation takes you where you need to most either express it or somebody needs to hear it. So, yeah, thank you.
Before he died, when he was still lucid, I guess, I thought maybe I needed to prepare him for his death. And I went on YouTube, and it was such like a gift from God that there was it was right. The first thing, I didn't even have to look for it, but the first thing I saw was an emergency room physician who was, I don't know if it was a TED Talk or what, but anyway, it was this emergency room physician who had seen so many people come back after a near-death experience. And he spoke to them, each of them. I mean, he said there was more than 1,000 people.
Wow.
That when he spoke to them, they all had a very similar story. And that when they got out of their body, they felt really good, and they went up this tunnel, and saw God. And he said that he is not afraid to die anymore because of all the testimonies that he has received from all these people. Very few people had a bad experience. I mean, almost nobody. I think there may be one or something, but anyway, I played it for Ron before that week, and he didn't remember. I asked him again, when he went into hospice, if he remembered the video, and he said no. So I played it for him again, and I think he got it. But
wow.
we are Catholics, so we believe in the afterlife. We believe, there's never been a time when I didn't believe in it, and I'm sure he did too, because he's a Catholic too, and so I felt good about that.
Yeah, and rightly so. You should feel good about that. It sounds like you just did an incredible job for all of those years, doing the best you could do. And for him to not be in pain for so many years, what an absolute gift that was. Absolute gift. And
Yeah.
So where did the idea of doing the Camino come from? Whereabouts in all of this?
So, while Ron was ill, and the last, after 2011, I had to be home, and I spent a lot of time at home, although I did go a few places. My girlfriend in 2013 went on the Camino Santiago. And even though she had blisters and bloody feet, she walked with bloody feet, I recognized she was doing something very special for herself. And so I thought, you know what, when Ron's done with his disease, I'm going to walk the Camino, just like Judy did. And so that's what I did after he after he died, I had a lot of work to do, the funeral, the grave, the
Yes.
insurance, the banking, all that stuff.
Yes.
And by January, I was done with all that stuff. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to go, I better get ready. So I started studying online how to pack for the Camino. And I went to the library by my house had a lecture how to pack light for the Camino. So I went to that. And that lady really gave me some really good tips. So that was
Great.
really great. And I just, I had to buy 4 packs before I found the right one. And
Yep.
REI, you can take things back. So I would try one, and if it made me sweaty or something, then I would take it back, or uncomfortable or made noise or something. So that was really great. And so I got my pack that I love, and I got a sleeping bag I got a children's sleeping bag because they said pack light. So I got the children's sleeping bag was big enough for me. And so that's what I got. And yeah, I got it all together. And I got my airfare. That was big. And by March, I was ready to go. So I went
Wow.
at the end of March and flew into Paris. And then I stayed there for a week so I wouldn't have jet lag when I started. And then I flew over to Biarritz. And then I took a cab to Bayonne and took a train to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And that's where it starts. So that's what I did.
Were you daunted by the sheer distance you were going to be walking? Like, were you prepared for that?
I used to walk with my friend just 3 days a week. In the morning, we would walk 5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even break a sweat. So I thought, well, I could walk 5 miles before lunch and 5 miles after lunch, and I'll be fine. So I wasn't worried at all. And then my sister-in-law said, okay, Kathleen, you're going to have to walk up mountains. So she went out and found all the mountains in San Diego, and we walked up them. And so I could get, used to walking up mountains. And so I was
No, let's share
prepared.
with everybody what age you are when you were doing this.
Well, I was 69 when I started. I was 69 when Ron died. And he was 71. I was 69. And then I had my birthday on the Camino. I was 70 years old when I finished the Camino. And then last year, age 73, I walked the Camino in Portugal too. So it goes from Lisbon all the way up to Santiago, Spain.
Oh, and what distance is that?
It's a similar distance. It's less than 500 miles. And I walked on to Finisterre, which is the end of the earth. And so that is like 480 miles to go that far.
Gosh. Oh my God, you've become this legend, walking legend. So let's talk about now, what were some of the most challenging aspects of doing this walk for you, whether that be physically, emotionally, spiritually?
Yeah, the mountains were really hard for me. It was so funny because when you're walking, you just have to keep walking, whatever it is. And so I remember I was in the mountains, and I would look up and I'd be, okay, well, there's the end of the road right there. And I'd get up there, and it was like a curve, and there would be another,
No.
and it just kept going. And I just thought, I was telling myself, you know what? It can't last forever. You're going to get there at some point. So just keep walking.
So where is getting there? Is there towns that you aim to walk,
Yeah.
in each stage? Yeah.
All along the Camino, there's albergues, and it's like a giant building with a bunch of bunk beds in it. And they have a kitchen, or some of them do have a kitchen and restroom facilities, place to wash your clothes. And so that's what so I would walk. What I did was I had a book, and it had a vertical map of the Camino as well as the topographical map. And so I would see if there was going to be a bunch of mountains the next day, and I would know if I could walk, 12 kilometers or 15 kilometers, And
Yep.
so I would notice, so if it was going to be a high mountain, maybe I'd only do 12 kilometers that day. And so I would find an albergue that was 12 kilometers away, and I would make a reservation. You call them up, and then you make a reservation. And so, and really many times I got to the albergue and they would say, "We're full." And I would say, "I have a reservation," and they would let me in. They would check my name on the list and make sure I was on the list. So a lot of people think that they're going to just, go
Rock up
anywhere, but that doesn't always work out.
Yeah,
And there's
exactly.
some places that don't take reservations either. So I have to add that in. Some places, you just have to, when you get there, you hope they have a place for you,
And if they didn't,
So,
were you caught out? Was there any times
well,
that you
a
weren't
couple of,
able to?
only one time I had to walk 28K in one day because all the places that I tried to go to were closed. And
Oh.
I thought I would go to this one place and they didn't accept reservations. And when I got there, they weren't even open. And they said they would open April 1st, and it was April 10th, and they weren't open. And nobody was around. I couldn't, there wasn't anybody to talk to. And then I went to the next one. I saw, in my book, I found another one, and they said, "Oh, our sheets didn't come in, so we can't open." And I'm like, "I don't care. I have a sleeping bag." And they're like, "No, we can't," and I'm like, ugh. And I just, I kept trying places and there was nothing. And they actually, I must have looked very tired because they would say, "Oh, do you want me to call you a cab?" And I'm like, "I'm not taking a cab. I'm walking." And finally, I went into this bar in this town, and the guy called ahead for me and found that there was a place in Estrella and they had a lot of room. It was a very big place. And so I didn't get there till after 6 o'clock at night. But anyway, you have to keep walking if you don't find a place.
Yes, yes. No, the other thing, when my daughter was preparing to go to what we have in New Zealand called Outward Bound, it's this adventure outdoor experience where you hike for days, you go abseiling, you go sailing, you do so much. It's all in the wilderness and it's beautiful.
How nice.
However, prior to going on that, we spoke to a pharmacist who had actually done the Camino, and she gave this tip. If you feel like you're going to get a blister, how to wrap her feet with this tape so it would stop her getting blisters, because if she got bad blisters, she would have to come home again. And yes, and that worked very
That's
well.
great.
So did you have some tips like that prevented you getting nasty blisters and things?
Yeah, I did not get blisters at all. And I think it's because I wear negative ion socks, and they're
Oh,
just putting negative ions into your feet all day long. And so I
wonderful.
didn't get blisters, and in both times I did not. But when I stopped, somebody told me, "Take your shoes off and let your feet rest every time you stop." Like if I stopped to go to the
Yeah.
bathroom or get a cup of coffee, I would sit down, take my shoes off, and let my feet rest.
Wow.
But the negative ion socks are great because they wick water away from you and they dry
Yes.
fast, and they're great.
Well, that's a great tip for anybody out there thinking of going on one of these adventures or even day to
Yeah.
day, the hikes that you can do day to day. So, what were some of the most rewarding aspects of this journey for you?
Well, it was very rewarding when I got to tell somebody something that I had learned while I was taking care of Ron. I went online and I studied with a bunch of enlightened thought leaders, trying to cure myself I had post-traumatic stress disorder from my childhood. It was kind of rough childhood there.
Okay.
And so I did a lot of healing. And then after so many years, of studying, I felt like I had some things to share with people, some things that worked for me. And one
Right.
time I was at an albergue, and it was the dinner they provided the dinner because there wasn't a restaurant near. Well, there was a restaurant near, but that restaurant guy did not want to feed all those people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was a restaurant next door, and I got up in the morning and I went over there, and he said no. He didn't want to.
No.
So I had to go walk to the next town and get breakfast. But anyway, so that night it was, cafeteria style. I had the tray in my hand, and there were these long tables, and I got to decide where I'm going to sit. And so I went and sat over on this table, and there was a guy there, and there were people there, and there was a guy and a lady, and then next to me was a man, and across from me there was a couple, but they got up and left, and a monk sat down over where they sat. And anyway, the young man, who was from England, asked me why I was walking the Camino. Actually, I think I asked him first, why are you walking the Camino? And he said, oh, I had some extra time from work, and I thought I would just walk the Camino. I don't have to be at work for a couple of weeks, so I thought I'd walk the Camino. People over in Europe, they can do that. I mean, it's not far for them. Like us, it's far. And so, anyway, I'm like, oh, how nice. And then he asked me why I was walking the Camino, and so I told him about Ron. Ron had died, and my mother died too. Like, Ron died in August and my mother died in December. And I was actually holding her hand when she died. That was lovely.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I told him that I cared for Ron for, so many years and stuff. And he said, wow, that's amazing. And I said, well, when I got married, I was 20 years old, and I remember thinking, my life is not going to be my life anymore. My life is going to be our life together now. And I remember distinctly thinking that the night before I got married and realizing that. And so when it came to taking care of Ron, it was a no-brainer. I was just going to do that. That's what I was, it was our life together, even though I was angry at him. And he said, wow, that's amazing. And then the lady next to him kind of took her elbow and nudged him and said, tell her the rest. And so he said that he had married this woman and she had a child. And then he realized that he was too young to get married. And so he had left her. And, and I guess me sharing about how I felt about marriage, and I was young, and then him saying that, I think he felt quite sheepish. And so I told him about Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian healing technique for the family, and how we have people in our life that just kind of make us crazy. And so saying the Ho'oponopono loosens our binds with them. We're kind of bound to them. They're bound to us to ruin our life, and we are bound to them to get our life ruined by them. And the Ho'oponopono loosens that up so that doesn't exist anymore. And I thought maybe that would help him with his wife so he could live with her,
Yes.
And so the Ho'oponopono is, first you say, I love you. And it's, I love God, God loves me, God loves the other person loves God, and I love that other person, and they love me. If you can say it, but if you can't, you shouldn't. And it's okay, I love you, I'm sorry. And it's not I'm sorry I did anything, but I'm sorry the situation exists between us. Yep. And please forgive me for what's going on in me that caused me to attract this. So I have a brokenness in me that's sending out a low vibration that's bringing this into me.
Yes.
So, and then thank you for showing me this so I could heal. So if I didn't have this person showing me my pain, I couldn't heal from it. So thank you for showing me this so
Yes.
I could heal. And then the big I love you again. I love God. God loves me. God loves the other person. Yada, yada, yada. And
Oh,
so
that is
that,
so beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. And so one time, oh, okay. So let me finish this story.
Yes. Yes,
um,
definitely.
so the lady next to him, I wrote it down for him, I had a little piece of
Hmm.
paper. I wrote it down for him and gave it to him. And then the lady next to him wanted to take a picture of it so she could have it. And then I told him, you have a child, and there is no person that your wife could find to love her that will love your child the way you love your child. And he said, that is very true. And so the next morning I saw him and I wanted to tell him a little bit more about Ho'oponopono. And he stopped me and he said, no, you already changed my life. Thank you very much. I'll never forget this, you know. So I think
Wow.
he needed some time to chew on it.
Did you come across a lot of people like that? A lot of people I know have, different forms of grief that they're trying
Yeah,
to work through. And
absolutely.
so they go on these epic walks because I guess it brings everything to the surface, doesn't it? It gives you the opportunity to think while you're walking endless miles.
Yeah.
And
It's a walking meditation, and it's um when we have pain, we act out, really act
Mhm.
out.
Yes,
But when you're walking, it's an action. You don't have to act out. You can walk, and it just carries you. And the place is so mystical. I mean, it was just wonderful. I mean, so beautiful. The nature in northern Spain, plenty of rain. It was spring when I went, and the flowers were out and the fields were being planted, and it was just lovely to be there. And really, at home, my house was full of my stuff and Ron's stuff. And whereas I didn't want to keep all his stuff, it made me sad to get rid of his stuff too. And so
yes.
it was good for me to get away for a while.
Yeah.
And
So you
so,
touched on that. You touched on like nature and how beautiful it is,
mm,
and there's so
mm,
many different types of beauty that you
right.
encounter along this trail. So talk to me, were you really affected by the power of nature that was surrounding you? Because I guess there were some times where it was just you and the environment and the elements.
Yeah. And like as you're walking along and the trees, I mean, the bushes are quite close and it feels like they're hugging you. You walk by and they're
Oh,
touching you.
yeah.
And that was lovely. And then you're out on a mountain somewhere, and and there's the whole side of the mountain is covered with yellow flowers, and you can smell
Mm,
them. And it was just
yeah.
lovely. On my birth, every year on my after Ron got sick, every year on my birthday, I would get myself a corsage to wear on my birthday. And after
Oh,
a while, I used to go out and find I would want a corsage of thistles because I love thistles, Scottish thistles.
oh, yes, yes, beautiful
And
flower.
so on the Camino, I picked a whole bunch of thistles and flowers and sort of put them through the buttonhole on my shirt like a corsage on me. That was lovely. There were so many
Oh,
flowers everywhere.
yeah. How has this
And
changed your life?
how has it changed my life? You know what? It has given me, well, um, I think it has given me some definition. I'm a hiker now, you
Hmm.
know, and whereas for so long I was Ron's wife, I was a mother, a wife,
Yeah.
an aunt, and now and I'm an author too. I wrote a book about it.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
but what it really taught me is that I can take care of myself. So when Ron and I got married, I went straight from my mother's house to his house. And even though, our house, we got an apartment. And even though he was young and I was young, I wasn't alone. But now I am alone. And so it just taught me that I can take care of myself. I had to find food for myself. I had to find a place to stay. I had to wash my own clothes. I had to carry everything on my back, and that's what I learned, that I could take care of myself, and really that I get the good stuff, because it was a little bit difficult being married to Ron. He never wanted to do anything I wanted to do. And so now I can do whatever I want to do.
Right.
And that was the way it was on the Camino too. I have quite a brilliance, and I could think of things that are helpful for myself. Every day I would buy a potato and I would nuke it and take it with me in the morning. So I had a nice warm potato to keep me warm, because it was spring. It was cold outside. And then I would eat it during the day. And I just, thought of things that were good for me that I did for myself.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I can feel that. I can really feel that. So tell me, if somebody were to pick up your book, what are they going to get from it?
Well, the book's name is Wisdom on the Camino, a spiritual journey sharing forgiveness and possibilities to inspire the rest of your life. And I really believe that. I studied online with so many enlightened thought leaders that I had some things to teach. And actually, I wanted to write the book about the things that I have to teach. And I was feeling reluctant to be teachy. And so I remembered I told people those things on the Camino. So I wrote my book about walking the Camino and telling people those things. So all my teachings are in the book. So you're going to get my teachings, but you're going to get what it's like being on the Camino.
Yeah,
walking every day.
Those, yeah.
Yeah. And all my adventures, I have so many fun adventures. And, I was reading after I wrote the book, and I read it to my cousin. And after a while, I was saying, "Oh, Linda, do you think anybody's going to want to read this?" And she said, "Kathleen, I have a big smile on my face while you're reading it to me." Yes, it's a great book. So that made me feel good. Like I can publish this. And so it is. It's a fun book. One of the people that wrote a review said that she was going to read it like a chapter a night. And the first night she read 1/3 of the book. And the second night she read the other 2/3, because she just couldn't put it down, because it's a fun book. And
Great.
And also in the book, right across from the table of contents, it says, "Read this first." And so what you do is it tells you to go and opt in to see my pictures, because my friends, I shared my pictures on Facebook with my friends, and they said, "You got to put your pictures in the book." And I'm like, well, gee, then it'll be $50 and nobody will buy it. Yeah. And so I made a website with galleries and portfolios, and each of the chapters has the pictures. So you click on chapter 1, you can see the pictures and read the chapter 1.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. Yes, because then you can imagine yourself as you're walking through that terrain, because you've seen the pictures of it. And
and the pictures helped me write it. The pictures helped me write it too. I had my pilgrim passport. You have to get a stamp every day. And so I had that to let me know where I actually was every day. And then the pictures, and then the little stories that I told on Facebook to my friends. And also my daughter made this thing. It was a WhatsApp, and she called it Mom's Walkabout Check-In. And so I told my kids the gory details. I told my friends just the regular stuff, but I told my kids the gory details. So I put the regular stuff and the gory details in the book.
Oh, that is so useful. I mean, because now that just times perfectly for what I want to sort of start winding down this chat about. You talk about you can't do unconditional love without adversity.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about that, because I think this is perfect timing.
Well, what I think is that when I came into this earth, before that, I was a low vibrational spirit out with God in the universe. And I wanted to raise my vibration. And, and so I found out that if you come into the earth as a person, you can raise your vibration through unconditional love. So even though knowing I had a low vibration and I was going to attract really awful things in my life with my low vibration, I decided to come in anyway. And I wish I had known about it. I didn't know. I thought, I had this awful story about my life and people just didn't like me in my life and I was a sad person. Sad child,
Mm-hmm.
sad person. And then so when I was in my 50s, then I started doing my healing that actually worked. And I learned that unconditional love will raise your vibration. And you can't even do unconditional love unless you have adversity. So, yay, I had a really sad life and people were mean to me. And now that I found out about unconditional love, I can love those people. And it raises my vibration by loving those people that were so mean to me. And I mean, my dad was an alcoholic, rageaholic child molester, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And I don't even feel like I need to forgive him anymore because I believe that I attracted it in with my low vibration. And although it doesn't have anything to do with shame. Shame has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But I believe that I was a valiant spirit who decided to come in here, even knowing that I would attract adversity. And then in the end, the adversity was part of the cure because, like I say, you can't even do unconditional love unless you have adversity. It's easy to love the people that love you, but those other people, it's hard. And it creates a high vibration in us, which is the vibration of love.
As you're talking about this, you could be talking about me here. Honestly, your story relates so well to my own. And honestly, this is the point I'm in now with unconditional love. I am such a great believer in that. And this is what this world needs to know. And yes, and it's through all the hardships that I've reached this place and I get to speak to beautiful people like yourself who have also been on these incredible journeys through lots of low vibration. And it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of facing stuff that you just don't want to face some days. But when you do, the rewards are so great. So that is so beautiful. Let's finish with talking about the transformational breathing work you do. How does that work? Have you got time to do that? Because I realize we're right on time.
No, I can. Transformational breathing is a full diaphragmatic breath. And you just use your full lungs. The diaphragm is hooked onto the bottom of the lungs. And so when you breathe in, you lower your diaphragm. And when you lower your diaphragm, it pushes your belly out. So that's how you can tell if you're doing it. So when you breathe in, it's like blowing up a balloon. And when you breathe out, it's just a relaxation of your diaphragm. It's not a pushing out. It's like a silent sigh. So when you breathe in, you're lowering your diaphragm and breathe into your belly. But of course, the air doesn't go into your belly, right? So you go, and then when you breathe out, you just relax your diaphragm and let the air go out like a silent sigh.
Yeah. And what's the effect? What are you doing when you're doing this?
And it's a circular breath. So right after you breathe in, you breathe out. Right after you breathe out, you breathe in. And because the circular breath causes entrainment, so we have sadness in our body on a cellular level. And that's what we do. We store our sadness in our body on a cellular level. So there's areas in your body that your body knows. I mean, it's not your brain that knows this, but your body knows if I breathe there, I'm going to feel the pain from that sorrow. Like if people have had their heart broken, they're shut down their chest breathing and they'll maybe just breathe in their belly. Or maybe if they had their free will shut down, they'll just be breathing in their chest, not their belly. And so I do a breath analysis on my clients, and I see where they're not breathing, and then I help them breathe in the areas where they're not breathing so they can resolve their emotional trauma that's stored in their body. So
the power of our breath. If only we knew this when we were little, how we could have changed our life just by learning how to breathe
fully
and through it. And
fully.
yes.
And also when we have the trauma, to breathe big around the trauma and allow it to go, instead of we hold it inside because we try and keep our composure and stuff like that. But animals, when they have trauma, they do all this panting, and they're all, upset sort of. And then they do this shaking thing, and then all of a sudden they shake it off. But we try and keep our composure, and we hold it inside.
Yeah, so hold on to too much, don't we? Yes. Right. Wow, what an incredible conversation. So there's
if you go online, transformationalbreathing.com, there's facilitators all over the world, and you can find one that maybe not too far from you.
Yeah. Well, I practice this all the time. I do that type of breathing all the time because I know the power of it. So, I just loved it. And I love that you do that. So I wanted you to explain, not me.
Thank you, Helen.
What you do,
Helen.
Yes, so I am inspired by you. You are incredible. You've just got this magical energy about you. And have you got any plans to scale any more peaks or
Kilimanjaro
landscapes?
There is another Camino that I haven't walked yet, and it's along the northern coast of Spain. It's called Camino del Norte. It starts in Irún and it walks to Santiago, and that's my next trip.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I wish you all the best on that. We are going to go finish off with some of the questions that I ask every person I speak with. So the first one is, what is the best thing that has happened to you so far today?
Today, I went to Mass and I went to communion. I walked to church. It's a mile away, and I walk up a big hill. And so I don't want to lose my tone. So I walk to church, and that's the best thing that happened today.
Oh, that's beautiful. What is your proudest moment that you can think of?
I don't know if it's, probably finding out that love is a decision was a very proud moment for me.
Yes.
But I have this other one that is, my daughter was afraid to learn to swim. And I told her, okay, well, you don't have to worry about it. Just do what the teacher says. They're the one with the problem for teaching you. You just do what they say. And I remember the first time I saw her swimming across the top of the water, I just thought that was a very proud moment for me. Just watching that little body swimming across the top of the water. I was, every time I want to have a happy thought, I can think of that.
Oh, yes. And it's often the smallest things. Well, they don't have to be big, do they? That is, I can just picture that. What is your go-to when you are having moments in your day that are not going so well?
I have a prayer. And the prayer is, dear God, please make everything turn out okay. And then you let God make everything turn out okay, because God really likes it when we call God, God, and we don't try and be God and make everything turn out okay. So that's what I say when I don't know what to do. Like I can't handle it. I don't know what to do. I can't fix this.
Do you talk about that in your book? Because I just realized earlier, we talk about surrendering. Let me just see if I can quickly find it, because it was all about, let me know. You wrote about surrendering to the process of walking and resting and taking care of your needs It's good
Mm.
medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That is
Mm.
very, very profound. I think we get so busy and so caught up in life we forget. And that summed it up beautifully. And I'm also going to put into the episode notes that beautiful prayer. Do you call it a prayer that you
Yeah.
talk about when you, yeah.
Yeah, dear
Yeah.
God, please make everything turn out okay. And really, miracles happen when you say that. Really.
Yes. And what about the one with your, are you Ho'oponopono one?
Yeah, the Ho'oponopono.
Yes.
Yeah, you should. I think I sent you a copy of it. You
Yes.
could put it in the notes.
I think I'll do that. I'll put it in the episode notes. Well,
Yeah.
Kathleen, what can I say? I knew as soon as I read your message that you first sent me that you were a lady I really wanted to connect with and speak to. And you were so much more than what I expected, which is just brilliant. What you shared about your life with Ron and how you changed your whole perspective on what love is, that in itself is priceless. But then about, being brave and courageous after he finally passed on and you deciding to do this epic journey and all the learnings and the wisdom you had to share along the way, and then coming back and writing a book in your 70s. Jeepers, what an inspiration you are. And I am so grateful that you have taken the time to share some of your experiences with us today.
Well, thank you, Helen. And oh, yeah, I didn't say you can find my book on Amazon. Okay.
Great. Yeah, I'll have the link to that. I'll put the Amazon
Okay.
link in the episode notes as well.
Thank you, Helen. I really enjoyed speaking with you. You're such a lovely person.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing or if there's a topic you'd like covered by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.